First off, let me tell you, I love the film. I absolutely love the film. I love what you did with it as far as horror film conventions and the history of everything. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you most about. There are a lot of resources here. I remember Stephen King said when he was writing Salem's Lot, it was as though he was using Dracula as a wall, and he was hitting the ball against the wall and seeing how it bounced back, and that was how it affected his novel. That was the metaphor he used. It seems as though you did the same thing. And the wall had the Wolfman from 1941, the whole Legend of the Beast of Gévaudan. I'm sure I mispronounced that. So many other elements. I was wondering, can you talk about these elements and how you use them, how you jettison them to come up with this unique film that you've made?
Well, yeah, I think that the daunting task is to say, oh, I'm going to reinvent the werewolf legend. I think I didn't know how to do it. And so I started off with a small premise about an isolated village in the late 1800s that was plagued by what they thought was a wolf, and that one of the children in the village had been murdered and another one was missing, and they're harboring a secret. And I thought it'd be interesting to show that from an outsider's point of view. So somebody comes to that and discovers that. So that was the premise of the film. And obviously I knew it was moving into werewolf territory, which I thought would be kind of interesting. But what was daunting was that even though I'm a big fan of werewolf films like American Werewolf in London and stuff like that, and so I started to think about what had been done before and how I could make the approach fresh. And you mentioned the 1941 Wolfman, and again that was very interesting because I think that was probably my Dracula wall. And I kind of thought, well, here was a guy who wrote a film about a werewolf being a metaphor for being Jewish in Europe in the late 30s. So, and it wasn't, it's not his fault that he's born Jewish, and yet he's prosecuted for being Jewish. And that was the metaphor for the wolf, the curse of being bitten by a wolf and turning into this thing that's chased and persecuted. And so I started to think in terms of that, and I was like, what is the modern day thing that plagues society today that could be used as a metaphor for the wolf? And I started to think about addiction and how we become prisoners of addiction, whether it's drugs or your phone or bad relationships. And I thought that was an interesting metaphor for the wolf, that you become a prisoner to the wolf, and that makes you do things that you don't want to do, even though they're bad for you, but you do them anyway. I think it's fresh enough to bring something to the table, and especially in that mythological world of the werewolf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love how it's a werewolf, but it's not a werewolf. The physical appearance, and I don't want to give anything away either, is different. Not completely different, but noticeably different. And I love the creature design that you came up with. And how did you work with your special effects people for that?
I was consciously moving towards probably a hairless werewolf. Mm-hmm. Basically, Mark Coulier came up with a really interesting sculpture of this kind of wolf shark, and we then gave it to Jean-Christophe Spadaccini in Paris, who did a sculpture of it and figured out how to make it work on set. And we had three of these wolves, and one was an attack wolf, where it was a guy in a suit that was literally lying on a wheelbarrow, and the back legs were attached to the wheelbarrow. So when the wheels went round, the legs went round.
Oh, great!
He had his front legs, and he would do this, and two guys would push this wheelbarrow very, very fast. And that was like our attack wolf. And then we had a full animatronic wolf that had full expressions that would move and snarl and do all sorts of things. And then we had like a stunt wolf, which was like a rubber wolf that we would just throw at actors.
I know that you finished this up before the whole COVID thing hit, but it seems as though anymore I can't look at anything without seeing it through that lens. And I was noticing as I was watching it, you had a couple of things there that the quarantining, so to speak, of the church sequence, the trying to get everyone to believe what's going on, and having those naysayers. I know you didn't intend that, but I couldn't help but see those modern day things within the film. And that's one of the reasons I love horror films. They just seem so malleable as far as how they can comment on whatever troubles we're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a great genre for that. And, because, in a weird way, you're holding up a mirror to society now, but also you're slipping in a sort of escapism for the situation. I mean, people are able to escape into this film and have a thrill ride of a sort of horrific, with the horrific element. But at the same time, if you take the sort of horror story away, you are left with a drama that deals with real life situations that are very poignant to today's goings on.
I know you're busy, but final thing, can you talk about where you shot and creating the atmosphere? Because it took me back to those old horror films and I felt as though I was there. This is a creepy place. It straddles the old world and superstition, and it has one foot in the modern world, and I always love that thing. Can you talk about where you shot and how you created the atmosphere?
I mean, we shot in France and very close to where I live. And so when I first moved in the area, the people that own the manor house had sort of knocked on my door and said, "Oh, we own this house, but we're never really there. We know you're a filmmaker. If you ever want to use it as a location, we'd be happy to lend you the house." So I was like, "Oh," and I remember at the time thinking, "How strange! Why would I want to shoot in someone's house?" I remember my wife saying, "Well, maybe we should just go and look at it, so at least it's in our brain." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, you go and look at it, and I'll, come report back to me. I'll do something else." And I remember she came back, and her exact words was, "It's great if you want to shoot something sort of 18th century colonial looking." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then obviously that was the first house that sprung to mind when I started writing this. And I went past there and saw it, and I was like, "My God, that is the manor house."
Sean Ellis, director of 8 for Silver, great horror film, a new take on the werewolf legend. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thanks very much.